and welcome to episode 16 of the Good Game Roundtable podcast. I'm Lin Jie Kong, and today I'm joined by Good Game series producer, although only for a little bit longer, Ben Shackleford.
Hello.
Hello, Ben. Why are you leaving, and why do you hate us?
It's nothing like that. I guess a cat is out of the bag now. I haven't actually announced it publicly, but I am moving on. These are my final weeks with Good Game as the director / series producer, whatever it is I do on the show.
Everything.
Script printer, Barjo and Hex Wrangler. So a new life awaits me in the private sector.
The commercial sector.
Yes, the commercial sector.
It's where all the fun is. Now, 5 years is a long time to be on a TV show. So today we're going to have a look back at some of your favourite moments.
Cool.
Whilst working the show, perhaps the most challenging moments you've had. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to pick your brains about the future of film and TV as well, because you've been in this industry a lot longer than most of us have. and I'm sure we can all learn from your experience, what to do and what not to do, right?
I don't know
Hopefully,
about that,
fingers
but thank
crossed. But before we kick off your exit interview,
yes.
First, I want to talk about James Bond. So
Right.
A lot of people might not know, but basically my inspiration for creating this podcast was post-Spectre.
Yes.
I was listening to a lot of the Nerdist James Bonding podcast. I don't know if you've heard of any of those. They basically watch an episode and they talk about it. So I probably listen to about 20 of them, however many they did.
Right.
And I wanted to make my own podcast. And my initial pitch was, I think you and I should just talk about Bond.
Yes.
For about 12 episodes, right?
Well, we've been talking about doing a Bond cast for quite a while.
Exactly. And we didn't get to it except till I got to episode 16 of the Good Game Roundtable.
Yes.
And then you're leaving. And now we finally get to talk about Bond. So listeners, if you don't know by now, Ben and I are probably one of the biggest, two of the biggest fans of Bond.
Yes, it got me into wanting to contribute to the film / television industry.
So what's your history as Bond? How were you introduced to Bond?
Like many people that I've spoken to, other Bond fans, I was introduced to it through my parents. Particularly my dad. So when I was growing up, whether it was in Tassie or Melbourne, my mum worked in hospitality. So every Friday and Saturday night, it was just my dad and I and my brother and sisters. And the routine was, particularly on the Saturday night, is we would go into the local town, we'd go to the VHS store.
VHS tapes, remember those things?
The smell is so distinctive. And we would basically get a couple of overnights and a bunch of weeklies. And in those weeklies, there was always at least one Bond film, and that was for my dad and I. And so we basically had them almost on a loop. Once we went from, Dr. No up until in those days it was like A View to a Kill, we just go back to the start. I guess from the outset it was connection with my dad. To this day we still talk about Bond, and, whenever there's a new Bond film, I fly back home to Melbourne and him and I go and see the new Bond film via Gold Class. Yeah, that's pretty much how I started. But then as I got into film and television, and I was like, right, I want to direct Bond films one day. That's, still my ultimate goal. I don't know if I'm ever going to get there, but it's nice to have.
We have to make our own Bond film.
That's right.
We're never going to get there.
We got close with the Good Game
We got
BC.
12 minutes in, yeah.
I began to appreciate what it has contributed to the film and television industry in the way that each film is structured, what it did for editing, what it did for action coverage, what it did for the action genre. So, it is easy to scoff at it and kind of think, they're kind of cheesy and tacky. And look, to a certain point they are, particularly during the Roger Moore era. But really they are great quality films where the money is always on the screen. And that's what I love about it. You look at a Bond film and you can see that everybody is bringing their absolute A game to it. Nobody's like, look, let's just get this thing over with. It's like, no, this is James Bond. This is, there's Jason Bourne and there's all these others, but this is Bond.
I feel like Bond is pure escapism, right? It is
absolutely.
That genre of films where you go, I want to be Bond, or I want to be in a Bond film. This is the life that I crave. I remember, not a lot of Hollywood franchises make their way to communist China, but definitely James Bond was one of the biggest franchises. I mean, that being said, I guess you can call it a British franchise instead of, a Hollywood one or an American one.
Yeah.
But like yourself, my love of Bond films has started because my dad loved Bond films.
Right.
And again, it was one of those Western films that was allowed in China.
Right, that's interesting.
You know, he watched them when we were back in China and, you know, when we came to Australia.
Yeah.
It's also one of those films where you can essentially watch without really a knowledge of English.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because,
it's so
you know,
visual.
it's visual, and also because it runs to a formula, you know?
You know exactly what's happening and when it's happening.
You know, Bond, you have the pre-tease sequence, and then he goes to MI6, he chats with M, and then he goes to Q Lab and gets his gadgets, and then he goes off and, you know, finds the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, like yourself, it was very much being introduced to Bond when I was a kid because my dad would watch those films, and then they would just play them all the time on TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I was growing up, it was all of the Roger Moore films.
Yeah.
And I watched all of them before I even touched any of the Sean Connery films. So growing up, it was like Roger Moore was Bond for me in a way.
Same for me, yeah.
And until I guess Pierce Brosnan started up, and it was like, oh, cool, here's this new guy. And growing up, like he was my Bond.
Yes.
So I guess, you know, what's your favourite Bond film?
I looked at this question when you posed it to me. I'm like, okay, I've got to separate what I think the best Bond film is to what my favourite is, because often your favourite is not the best one. It's the one that was most influential at a particular time in your life.
and the most nostalgic for you, right?
Exactly, that's right. So look, it has to be GoldenEye. And the reason is it's the first Bond film I went off to see on my own. And I was 18, roundabout, I think, and I drove to the cinema. And it was Boxing Day, and I just remember sitting in the audience thinking, I've driven myself to see a Bond film, and I'm here on my own with all these other, what you hope is sort of Bond fans. And I remember it was noisy. It was Knox City Cinemas. And I remember at some point, as the logo went across the screen, or the gun barrel went across the screen, I actually said, can everybody just shut up?
Oh my God, you were that guy.
I was that guy.
Even back then, you were that guy. Similarly, I think, you know, you and I have talked about GoldenEye for years now.
Yeah.
Like, we keep coming back to GoldenEye.
We do.
And I think we've chatted about this in the past. I personally think it's actually one of the most solid films ever made.
Without a doubt.
In terms of, yes, it's cheesy, but it's a Bond film.
Yeah.
But if you look at the payoff, the setup, how much money they used, I think they made it with $50 million.
They did, yeah.
Which is in, you know, today's money, it's pittance, right?
Yes,
you can't even make like an action film.
That's the marketing budget of a superhero comic film, you know? Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, the marketing budget for Skyfall was like $120 million or something.
Amazing.
So that's over double the budget of GoldenEye. Absolutely, I agree with you. I think it's what Martin Campbell did with that and to reboot the Bond franchise. If anyone knows the history of the Bond franchise, everything could have gone to shit after Timothy Dalton. Like it could have been License to Kill could have been the end of Bond forever, right?
And if you watch that film, there's definitely a full stop on that film. You know, that's like, oh yeah, License to Kill you could finish the Bond franchise there, and you wouldn't be like, oh, you left me hanging. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. What's your kind of guilty pleasure Bond film? What's like the worst Bond film that you could you know admit to actually liking?
It's actually A View to a Kill. For so many reasons. Christopher Walken, come on, Max Schreck is such a great... Was it Max Schreck? No, Zorin.
He was Zorin, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting confused with his Batman Returns character. Zorin was such a great villain. Grace Jones was awesome in it. I really liked the song. I think at that point Roger Moore was 56 years old.
Was that his last?
It was his last.
That was his last film,
Bond film. So there's some scenes in it where you're like, oh, okay. But it has such a great sense of humour to it. There's a great car chase in it. You know, I prefer the Bond films with some kind of car element. And I like the whole image of that particular film.
I think you could probably say that for most of Roger Moore's films.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Roger Moore's Bond films.
That's true.
You know, he did one good one, Live and Let Die, and then the rest are kind of on par.
Yeah, you wouldn't say Spy Who Loved Me?
Oh yeah, I guess Spy Who Loved Me is a bit better than the rest. Yeah, so it's like Live and Let Die, Spy Who Loved Me.
He had a pretty good run. It's no Moonraker.
Well, it's no Die Another Day, right?
Yeah. Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Poor old Pierce.
Worst Bond film? Would you agree?
Oh,
Die Another
without
Day?
a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, I can kind of see why they got to that tipping point, I guess you call it. But I mean, I'm glad it happened as well, because it made we've read all the books and watched a lot of docos and made them go, oh, okay, we've gone too far. And that needed to happen.
I still say that if you watch Die Another Day, up until the point where Halle Berry dives backwards off the cliff.
That's true.
It's actually not a bad Bond film.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually okay. The whole bit in North Korea where he's obviously been captured and then the prisoner swap on the bridge and everything. Yep. Even in that hovercraft tank chase.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad.
There were merits in there.
Yeah.
And then Halle Berry happened in Cuba, and ever after that point it was like pure downhill.
Yeah, what is going on here? Yeah, absolutely.
I think in terms of quality, though, I would definitely say Goldfinger, Skyfall, and You Only Live Twice for me are probably three of the highest.
Where do you rate on Her Majesty's Secret Service?
I think it's up there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people shit on that film.
Yeah.
Because of George Lazenby.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even that bad.
No, he's actually
he's actually quite good in it.
Yeah.
And I think people just... people have a thing against that film because they go, oh, George Lazenby only did one film, so it must be bad. Yeah. It's a pure, solid Bond film. It's probably closer to the books than...
Yeah, absolutely.
Casino Royale is probably the only other film that's closest to the books.
That's right, yeah. And just for what happens in that film, I mean, and I love it when, see him get married in that film, and then I like it in later iterations of Bond where they just touch on the fact that he did have a wife. I think it was License to Kill, where Felix tells his new wife James was married once a long time ago. I like those little moments. So I like what it does to the canon of James Bond.
Will Daniel Craig come back?
No, I really don't think so. I mean, there's a few things pointing for it. First of all, he's, during the publicity tour for Spectre, he made some famous lines, which... it was immediately after. He's doing the press tour. He's probably exhausted. Of course, you're going to say that.
But that's like us after a shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, even during a shoot, it's like, I'm never, ever doing this again.
How many times have we said that after Good Game Live?
Yeah. Well, even on skits, like, I've been shooting this Friday Night Lights sketch with Nick kind of all week, really. And we did the big locker room scene yesterday. I was like trying to wrangle half the 80% of the Good Game office down in a very narrow corridor on low ground, and I suddenly just went, why am I doing this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to do this ever again in my life. But then you just do it again.
Yeah, because you get excited by the next thing. Something else is put on the table and you're like, oh no, I want to do that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine, if Eon Productions went to Daniel Craig and said, look, it's not so much about the money anymore. I think the people around him make it about the money. But I think if they said to him, look, we are taking Bond in this direction, then I think that's what would excite him. But not only has he said in press interviews that he's not so interested in it, but he's committed himself to so many other projects, particularly this long-running TV show.
Yeah, he's on a TV show now.
Yeah, which is, high-end and it's going to run for a very long time. And I think by the time he finishes that, has a break and then comes back to it, it's almost another 3 years from now.
His body can't hold out. He's had shoulder reconstruction.
Exactly, yeah.
He did his ACL on Spectre.
Yeah.
He's probably going to be bionic if he's continued
be a
to
head
play.
In a jar.
Yeah, Bond. How do you rate his series of films?
I think he's given us some of the best. I think Casino Royale and Skyfall are masterpieces of not just James Bond, but also just filmmaking. To see the reinvention that Martin Campbell did again was amazing, and to see him evolve as a director. There's touches of his style, but there's also, how he evolved and he moved with the times. So I think that... Casino Royale gave us a lot. I know that you're more of a fan of Quantum of Solace than I am.
You hate Quantum of Solace, and I've always said to you, because you haven't seen it again since
I have not.
cinemas, okay?
I don't know if I can do it. Yeah,
and I feel like you should, because I think you should watch Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace back to back. And I think anyone who actually really hates Quantum of Solace should really do that,
right?
Because I've always seen that film as like an addendum to Casino Royale.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
It's that kind of fifth act.
Yeah.
Or, 4.5 to the fifth act.
Yeah.
Of Casino Royale, and it works really well.
Yeah.
But I think with like a 2.5 year delay between the two films, a lot of people went into Quantum of Solace expecting it to be Casino Royale.
Yeah.
And it's really not.
It's not. And it was such a great trailer, and a really interesting cast. and an interesting idea that was just, I mean, there was a writer's strike, so they were doing a lot on the fly, and you could see them.
Well, I think Mark Forster and Daniel Craig were writing the script on the fly, like whilst they were shooting the film.
Exactly. And from that point of view, you go, well, geez, you guys did pretty well. Mark Forster's a brilliant director, very talented. So I think that let them down. But overall, I think, Casino Royale and Skyfall were great. I will go back and watch Quantum of Solace one day, and I was pretty disappointed with Spectre.
Did you watch Spectre again?
I think I've watched it one more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And any difference in your
Not
feeling
really.
towards it?
No. Even, after you're kind of like, all right, I'm off the hype train, I'm just going to sit back and watch this. It's got some really great moments. There are some really cool things in there, but I still feel like Daniel just sort of walked, through it. And I do feel like Sam Mendes, the director of the film, wasn't quite as on point as what he was with Skyfall.
Do you feel I felt with Spectre, they got to a point where they were so scared about parodying themselves or going too far with the Bond cliche that at any point in time that you expected the Bond cliche, it didn't go there.
Yeah, that's true.
And so the whole film was quite muted in a way because it didn't get to that point where there was an action chase sequence.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there was no real moment where it hit that point. And so the entire film was, I thought it was very lyrical, but again, it didn't make you have that like, fuck yeah, Bond moment,
exactly,
right?
That's right, which Martin Campbell 100% gets. Yeah. He knows how to give you those hero moments. And they're a bit cheesy, but that's what you're watching a James Bond film for.
Yeah. So who's going to be the next Bond?
I like Aidan Turner, who was from a couple of shows,
Poldark.
Being Human, Poldark. I didn't think I did until I watched And Then There Were None, which was an adaptation, a BBC adaptation of an Agatha Christie story. And look, there's just a couple of scenes in there where you go, hang on a minute, you could be it. So from a physical point of view, he's very different to Daniel Craig, which I think is good. Daniel Craig was the blunt instrument. I think it's time to have the intelligent Bond, the spy element of Bond. Like when you think about Daniel Craig and his run, how much actual spying did he do?
No, because they actually changed his job title to assassin. Like, did you notice that? Like, throughout the films, it was like, oh, no, he's not really spying anymore.
Yeah.
He's just killing important people. Like, there's no spying involved. He's possibly the world's worst spy.
He's connecting a few dots, but I mean, really. So I think Aidan Turner could be... one thing I liked about previous Bonds, particularly with Pierce Brosnan and Roger Moore, not so much Timothy Dalton or Sean Connery, is both of those Bonds felt like they were always a little bit out of their depth. You saw Pierce Brosnan fight, and he wasn't a good fighter. Those fights weren't choreographed. He's actually a very tall, scrawny guy. My
favourite moments in Pierce Brosnan Bond films are where I pick the stunt double.
Yeah.
Like, you pick the cut where it goes to the stunt double. Like, every time you go watch GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, like, every jump or fall, you know that exact cut where it goes to a stunt man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I like the look on his face when he gets punched or he swings a punch. He's always got that look like, this might not work, but I'm going to give it a go. And I feel like Aidan Turner could do that a little bit. Almost evoke more the 50s or 60s kind of era of the Bond. Not set in that time, but I think... I always come back to a quote from Barbara Broccoli, the producer of the Bond films now, and she always says, whenever I'm casting for a Bond, I look at an actor and I'm not sure whether they're going to fuck me or they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
And I look at Aidan Turner and I go, yeah, you've got that look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously people have talked a lot about Tom Hiddleston and I think James Norton, what's his name? Like Happy Valley, that guy? Yeah, he's been mentioned.
Look... Tom Hiddleston's is way too big in terms of his worldwide presence now. And I think he has a softness in his eyes. Even when he's playing Loki and he's meant to be the most villainous of characters, there's still I
don't trust him in a torture scene. Yeah, if he's being tortured for state secrets, I think he'd let it go. I think he'd break.
I just think he has a kindness in his eyes that I don't think he could play quite so cold, which is essentially what Bond is. Bond, if he doesn't like you, he'll just shoot you. He's like, I don't care.
Yeah. He's just like, many bad guys.
Yep.
So obviously there's been a bit of controversy in the last couple of years in terms of diversifying Bond, right?
Yeah.
And you and I talk a lot about adaptations and how people take, for example, comic books or novels and how you can diversify characters. And we get to Bond, and usually I'm like, yeah, totally cool, whatever you want to cast. It gets to Bond, and I'm like, no, I feel like he needs to be like an Englishman.
Yeah,
Which is so hypocritical.
It goes against everything I think. I kind of feel like everything around Bond can change except Bond. I'm totally cool with changing M, Moneypenny, Q, everything, every single aspect of him. But him, actual Bond, is the one constant. And that's even in the arc of each film. In only the recent films has the character gone on a journey. And in the most traditional Bond, the only character that goes on a journey is the villain. Yeah. Bond is exactly the same from the minute that he walks onto the screen to the minute he walks off the screen. He doesn't change.
He doesn't learn anything.
He's like,
guy.
nah, this is my job and I'm, got to get rid of you. So I just want that to be consistent.
Yeah. I feel like for myself, I keep having to check myself because I'm like, you know what? You keep questioning other people when they don't diversify their cast, so why can't you deal with that in terms of Bond?
Yeah.
So I think in particular in the last few months, I'm like, okay, well, what would Bond be like if you had a black Bond or if you had a female Bond or a gay Bond even? Like, could it still be, the same sort of franchise?
Yeah. I mean, it probably could.
But it's that niggling feeling, right?
It is.
It's that thing of like, it's what fans, I mean, I bitch about other fans when they do it, but when I do it, I'm like, I'm just like everyone else. It's like, if it's going to destroy my childhood, then don't do it.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. It's a minefield of a conversation with Bond, I think, Lynn, and I'm totally for, again, changing his world. I just want him to be constant.
Would you watch it if Gillian Anderson was Bond?
Of course. I love Gillian Anderson. I think she would make a great Jane Bond. But I would hope that it would run in parallel with Bond.
They should just make it. Honestly, why even, give it. It doesn't need $200 million budget.
No, it really doesn't.
Make it with like $75 million.
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone would go see it.
Yeah,
it would have a great, life after the cinemas as well.
Yep. Be a talk, like everybody would see it out of a curiosity factor.
Yeah, so, and she has that seductive quality. Like you see that in The Fall, and
absolutely.
You're like, as a secret agent, you've got the chops, I think, to kill someone.
Yeah,
but also to absolutely seduce them.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well, like okay, whoever's making action films, I don't know, in England right now, just cast Gillian Anderson.
Get her on the phone
for a Bond-like film. Who should direct the next Bond?
Suzanne Bier. Without a doubt. She directed The Night Manager, and she was just absolutely on the ball in terms of that Bond tone. And it can come down to an establishing shot. It comes down to the way a character enters the room. Everybody, or a lot of people I know, watched that show and said to me, how can you not think that Tom Hiddleston would make a good James Bond after watching that show? And what they're picking up on is not necessarily his presence, it's the presence of the director. It was just hitting all the right notes. So I would love to see Suzanne Bier do the next Bond.
I feel like that was her Bond audition, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And on a BBC One budget as well.
Yeah,
like she took that, and I haven't watched a full series yet. I've watched enough of it to go, oh man, like, with what you've done with your limited budget, that's almost Martin Campbell-esque.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like for a reboot Bond, like you would be perfect.
Yeah.
I know you've thrown up Danny Boyle, a couple times.
It would be interesting to see, I mean, he did a great job with the little sequence that he did for the London Olympic Games, but after watching The Night Manager, it's evident from the first couple of scenes. You think, okay, this director, she's really got the eye for it. Yeah.
It pains me because I've always wanted to be the first female director of Bond. Sure. And she's going to beat me to it. Where do you want to see Bond go for this next reboot?
I would like to see it turn more. I would like to see it move down the Cold Era, East Berlin, rain-coated cobble streets espionage Bond. I still want my 3 big action sequences, my pre-title, car chase or something in the middle and then something towards the end. But I do want it to be more about spying. I want to see Bond a little bit out of his depth. I want to see
a bit more like Edward Snowden, WikiLeaks.
But the thing is, I want to move away from that. I'm a little bit sick of the hacker.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was in the recent Bourne film as well. It's very current and I get all of that, but I would like to see a return to traditional spy techniques, an old school sort of take on it. It's probably not going to be very modern or very popular, but I guess that was my biggest issue with Spectre, was really the big ticking clock was information, was, surveillance. And so, yeah, okay, it's not a threat enough to me. Like, really, if somebody's hacking into my phone or watching me 24/7, good luck to you. I'm not that interested.
Well, Google's already doing that anyway.
I don't care. Just go for it. But if there's, a nuclear warhead pointed at London, it's like, okay, I can get on board with that. Yeah. If there's a laser in the, suborbital space that can shoot anybody, I can get on board with that. So, yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I feel like they're going to go for a younger Bond.
Yeah.
Which is great because I don't think we've had one for pretty much forever, right?
No, they've always been quite mature.
I think Daniel Craig may have been one of the youngest.
I think it was Lazenby.
Lazenby was the youngest.
Because in the books, he's meant to be 33 years old.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see it cast with that because it actually, if they get the right actor, I'd like a proper run, like a good 10, 12-year run of a Bond.
But they can't reboot with Casino Royale, so
just continue.
I feel like they're going to jump in the middle, but he's just going to be really young.
Yeah.
And he's going to be able to run without doing his ACL in.
That's right.
All right. I mean, we could chat about Bond for hours.
Yeah.
But I want to move on to, I guess, your time with Good Game. So, as I mentioned, 5 years on a TV show is quite a long time.
Yeah, it's almost unheard of.
Most shows don't even last 5 years.
No.
And obviously, Good Game, this is our 10th anniversary. You've been here since mid-2011.
Yeah, it would be sometime
like around then. And speaking about Bond, I mean, I personally feel like one of the best things we've done together was the Bond BC, which we did in 2012.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was great because I think what it really started to do was it really started to help us find our creative feet a little bit, because I don't think it was that long after I started that we did that.
Probably almost a year. I feel like,
it was about a year after.
You came in around like July 2011 and then kind of started producing segments and stuff. And then, I mean, we both started talking about Bond and we knew 2012 was the release of Skyfall. It was also the 50th anniversary of the franchise.
That's right,
and we definitely wanted to do something with Bond. And I remember our boss Janet was very skeptical.
Yes,
because
right.
She kept saying, well, what does Bond have to do with video games? And I remember, like, both of us were like, well, Janet, like, a lot of games have been made about Bond.
We can almost justify anything on Good Game.
In particular, GoldenEye, one of the best games ever made. And then I remember it took me about a month to write that episode. And I'm not ashamed to admit right now, but I think I kind of gave you the script to direct or something. I don't think we actually decided. It was like I wrote it, and I think either maybe you said or Janet said, and it was like, oh, okay, so yeah, I'll just organise it, and it kind of moved on. I think personally at that point I was like, damn it, that's like one of the best scripts I've ever written.
Done.
Shit, I've given it to Ben. But, that being said, I think you did a fantastic job with it. I don't think I could have done as good a job at that point in time.
Well, I couldn't have written a script as good, so...
But have that happened right now?
Yeah,
you better have, like, you wouldn't have torn that script from my dead hands. But yeah, as you said, I guess that backwards compatible really solidified the type of... visual style that we were looking for in terms of Good Game, because you mentioned you... I guess, found Good Game on ABC One Repeat. And back in those days, it was very much a garage show.
Yeah.
And you came on board, and with your level of experience in terms of television and film and other things, you wanted to bring something different to Good Game. Talk a little bit about those early years and what you were hoping to do when you came into Good Game.
I didn't really come in with any preconceived kind of like, oh, right, I'm going to rip this show apart and put it all back together. I really put it down to, at that time, our series producer, Janet. She really has a management style that is like, look, show me what you can do. And so that makes you want to step up and show the people around you what it is you can do. And that's really rare in television. Most of the time in TV, your series producer or senior producer or whatever is like, look, this is the style of the show, this is the format of the show, you stick to that style, and really you don't have a say. The camera operators choose the angles and all that stuff. As a practitioner working in television, you pretty much building or putting the elements together for there to be a story for an editor to kind of go, okay, I've got something here. But this is one of the only shows I've ever worked on where I actually can sort of think, well, I'm going to storyboard this little sequence and I'm going to direct something and I'm going to put some people in costumes and all that kind of stuff. It's so rare to do that. So it wasn't until I started here that I saw that I could do that and you could do that and Gus could do it and we could all do it together that I thought, okay, we can really do some cool stuff here. So let's try and put some of that in the show. And it was also, like you said, just getting to talk to you and Gus and other people on the show that, okay, we all also, along with gaming, have a love of cinema. So let's try and put that cinema into the show as much as possible. And then I think the other thing is the audience let us. They reacted positively almost every time we put Barjo or Hex into a silly hat and put them against a green screen and like, right, now they're in space, They love that kind of stuff. So that encourages you to want to do more, doesn't it? You're like, all right, well, if you liked that, maybe you'll like this.
Yeah. What are some of the favourite things that you've done on the show?
There's so many. I mean, of course, that Bond BC, has a fond place in my heart because it was the first time we were like, okay, let's actually put all this together and have a bit of fun with it. Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's hard because there's so many times that we've come together as a team and really sort of defied the odds because we're not a big budget show despite how many people work on it and despite the amount of episodes we do. It is kind of sticky taped together, this show. I think the first time I felt like, wow, this is really special is our very first time all together at a convention, which was on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, at EB. At
EB Expo.
2011, 2012?
I think it was. 2011, I remember it was summer, so it would have been either the end of 2011 or early 2012.
I feel like that was the first year that you came on the show.
It was, yeah. Because I was still a bit, when Janet said, look, some of us are going to the Gold Coast, some of you can come and sort of pay your own way. How do you feel about that? And pretty much everybody said, yeah, all right. And we got one house all together on the Gold Coast, typical tacky Gold Coast mansion. Not really a mansion, it was a 3-bedroom house, I think. But we all put in and we all just went and it was so funny because you look at where we are now in terms of our conventions that we go to, then we were actually outside of the convention floor. Yeah. We were in the lobby at a little table that we put together ourselves with, a couple of trestles or something. And I just really liked that experience because it showed me, okay, all these people sort of come together. So out of all of the experiences, going to, E3, which is always great and all that kind of stuff, I think that was probably the most special time on the Good Game from my time here and from my point of view.
And that was 5 years ago, and it was all downhill from that.
Yeah.
I guess, we're talking about the creative freedom that we have on this show, and it's something that is incredibly special, and you don't have it on a lot of shows. But we obtain that creative freedom because we end up having to do everything ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
You were just saying last week that you were spray painting cardboard till like 2 a.m. And I've done things where I had to go to
You've
Woolworths.
Gone above and beyond, Lynn.
Oh, man. I've done things where I had to go to Woolworths, the day before a Christmas special to get a Christmas tree. I had to get Sani to go buy American football yesterday because we couldn't get one from Props. But it's all those little things that... And I think you have to put in the effort, right? And that's where that craft comes in because I think a lot of people at that director, producer level might step in some area or on some show and say, oh, no, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Or art directing's not my job.
Yeah.
Or sound's not my job. Or, that whereas in this team, you do everything.
Yeah.
In your vision to make it happen, right?
You really do. You roll up the sleeves and it's like, all right, well, look, if nobody else is going to do it, then I'll do it.
What are some of the most challenging moments that you've faced?
Some of the most challenging, I guess, I don't think there's been one particular moment when I thought, okay, this is really testing limits. It's when we getting into the back half of the year and, Good Game And working in television is a job like any other job. You'll have days that you absolutely love, and sometimes you'll have days that you're just like, you know what, I just don't know if I can do it today. And that's just being honest, but obviously, you know, appreciate it. But I think when, you know, the games aren't so good, when there's not a lot to say about them, when you're looking at the rundown for an episode, when it's that back half of the year, it's, you know, August, September, and there's not a lot of those big game releases, it's like, all right, I still have to put together an entertaining 29.59 of a show. Yeah. You know what I mean? How do I make this good? I enjoy those moments because it does push you creatively, and that's when you come up with ideas like the Bond special or science fiction special or whatever it might be. But sometimes it's like, God, I just wish we had that big AAA title to just kind of carry us across the line.
I wish we had a mid-year hiatus right now.
Exactly. That's right. Sometimes, you know, I think it almost should be a split season. Take off July and August and then come back once the games start rolling in. But
we just create a drama series for July and August. Right. We'll shoot a dramedy.
12 episodes of a Name the Game gag.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I don't think there is one particular element that is particularly challenging. I just think it's that time period each year when it rolls around. I mean, really, the challenges that we have on this show are challenges that any producer faces, particularly here at the ABC, where money isn't rolling in the door. You can't call a company and say, look, if you give us X amount of product, we'll put your name on the credits. We're not allowed to do that. We have to pay for everything. You know, the amount of times I said, no, look, we don't have a lot of money. We are the ABC.
Give us a discount, please.
Can you please let me come and film in your amazing warehouse location for $100? But generally speaking, most people, as soon as you mention Good Game in the ABC, they're very generous. They're like, oh, my kids love that show. Or, you know, oh, yeah, I used to watch that show. Or even just the fact that you're from ABC. It's like, yeah, look, we know that you guys aren't Channel 9 or whatever. So, yeah, we can help you out. So, you know, in those challenges comes opportunity, and I actually kind of welcome them sometimes.
Have you looked back at anything? Like I always have this thing where occasionally I might take some time out and go watch some older episodes or segments I've done.
Sure.
And sometimes I'm like, how the hell did I ever get that done? Like, how did I even manage that? I feel like I couldn't even manage that today with more experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, behind me. Like, do you have any moments where you go, wow, like maybe I was just comatose during that shoot and we just got through it?
I think, you know, and you and I have both been to E3, that we get that experience from that. You know, it's just such a whirlwind of a week. And it's not just that week, it's then afterwards with post-production and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, post is like the worst. Oh, like being there is like,
it's actually kind
of
hard.
Fun. Yeah, but you're overseas and you're running on that overseas adrenaline, whereas that post is just... that it's insane.
Yeah, that's
right?
what kills you. That's what, you know, I mean, you slept here one night, didn't you?
That was GDC.
Yeah, GDC. You stayed here overnight. I've gotten close, but I haven't quite done that. But yeah, absolutely. I think some of the specials that we've done, particularly like the sex special, I think we pulled that together like literally 2 weeks before it went to air or something. I remember the date was coming up and I was like, guys, are we on top of this? Because I feel like we're not really on top of it. And then I was like, oh, yeah. And it really did take a full team effort. Everybody had their segment. Everybody had a script to produce. Lots of gameplay. You know, I've never shot an episode of Good Game that way before or since. But you know, it rated quite well. Our audience seemed to really appreciate it. So I was really appreciative that our audience responded really well. But yeah, I look back on that one, I'm like, how did I get that? Not only because of the subject matter, but just the way that it was put together.
Yeah. And do you find, I mean, obviously, when you're in a higher level position and you're in a leadership role and that pressure really comes down to you. Yeah. And that's not saying that people on your team don't care about it. Like everyone is under pressure and everyone's, you know, cares about their role and what they're doing. But in terms of trying to keep everyone together, that sense of pressure can be overwhelming at times.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what keeps you up at night because you're not just thinking about all the things you have to do. You're thinking about, what if this doesn't work? Like, what if I turn up on set tomorrow and this element falls apart or this thing doesn't come through or that person says no or... You know, what happens if you put it all together and then you show Janet or, you know, one of the grown-ups here, as we say, and they're like, no, that didn't work. Yeah. And it's like, oh, God, I've really slaved my guts out on this. So, but at the same time, you kind of need that fear. If it was all kind of cruisy and everything
fear
got
is so
through,
important. Pressure and fear, stress.
You need it. You really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, you know, they are tough times, but I also appreciate it.
What are you taking away from your time at GG?
So many things. I remember when I said at the board table, I was like, look, guys, I've got some news I'm going to finish up in the next couple of weeks. And I said, I came here to move to Sydney to work on a show I love and to work on the ABC, but I'm leaving with a family. And I genuinely do believe that. This is more than just a team that rock up Monday to Friday to make a TV show. We all know each other really well. We all have fights. We all love each other. We all get on each other's nerves. We all hug each other at the end of the day. And I think I'm just taking that away. You know what I mean? That this is really is a special time. I'm probably not going to have this experience ever again, no matter what kind of show I worked on. I've never had it before, and I really don't think I'm going to ever have it again. So I think it sounds a bit wishy-washy. It's not a specific thing, but it's just an overall feeling that when I come into this office, I feel like I'm coming home. So,
and people annoy you as much as, your family members.
Absolutely.
Do, yeah.
Gus,
and can
shut
only
up.
and only family members can. What's the one thing that you're going to miss?
That is a really good question. The lunch table. We all sit around and have lunch together. I'm going to miss that. I don't think there's one thing. The shenanigans. We're constantly, having arguments about silly things that we watched on TV, games that we've played, books that we've read. I guess the compatibility in terms of interests on this team. I'm interested in Bond. I can talk to you a lot about Bond. I'm interested in a little bit of advertising stuff, which I can talk to Gus about. I'm interested in Batman, which I can talk to Stephen about. I love my true crime murder mystery stuff, and I can talk to Steph about that. Pete and I have a love of Star Wars. So does Elliot. Every single facet of my geeky pop culture interests is somehow appreciated by somebody else on this team. And I can guarantee I'm not going to get that, when I go back to the commercial world.
I still think, Good Game is honestly the nerdiest office.
Oh, without a doubt.
Not just pure nerddom, in terms of, one topic, but just everything.
Everything, yeah.
We are just nerds about everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everyone's got a topic that they're a nerd about.
Yeah.
I've just really appreciated having you on board on Good Game because I think we've really pushed each other.
Yeah,
absolutely. Over the last 5 years.
That's true.
I've always felt that, you do something really cool and then I'm like, shit, Ben's done something amazing. Fuck, I'm going to have to top that. And then I'll do something really cool. And then
I'll be man, look at that Halloween set. Fuck, I've got to do that.
Yeah, and then you have to do something better.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. We have to find someone who can challenge us as much. Yeah, so... Yeah. I think that's important though to have someone that, and it's not like a vicious rivalry.
No, it's not. It's not competition in terms of I'm trying to beat you or be better than this. Yeah. It's like I want to raise myself to your level, and I think we're all like that. But I think there's this little group between you, me, Pete, Gus. That we always do that. Like I'll pitch an idea to Goose, and he'll kind of but what if we this, and then I'll be like and then we can that, and so an idea that you have on the train ride on the way into work is pretty good in your head. As soon as you talk to you or Gus about it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's actually not. But you've always got but what you could do is you could do this.
Yeah.
And then by the time you've had that 10-minute conversation, an idea that was probably a 4 or a 5 in your head has suddenly become an 8 or a 9.
Yeah.
So
if only we recorded all the ideas.
Yeah.
Like Joe, man. That guy.
Joe,
just bottle him up.
Yeah.
Just
give me a name, Joe, quick. He's brilliant at it.
Yeah, he should come up with sales ideas for everything. So you've been in the video games industry for 5 years now.
Yes.
What have you learnt?
Okay, it's funny because even to this day, and I know other people will consider me or consider what I've contributed as part of the video games industry, I still think of it as television. I still wanted to make a show that if you're not a gamer, you could still watch it and go, okay, I appreciate something that's happening here. It is an interesting industry. This is the first interaction I've ever had with it, and I think most of the people who watch the show and listen to it will know that different people come from different areas to contribute to Good Games. So, for example, Elliot came from games journalism, Janet came from television, you came from within the ABC network. So we've all come from different areas. I definitely came from television. I didn't come from video gaming at all. So this is my first foray into it. I'm surprised at how close it is. Everybody knows everybody, not just here in Sydney, but in Melbourne and Brisbane and other areas. It's incredibly close-knit. It is very supportive. It's gone through a hugely interesting time in this country. I just compare when I started and LA Noire had not long been out compared to now. when it's, dominated by the mobile space. I'm incredibly hopeful for the Australian games industry. I think it's great that we've found our little niche, a little bit like we have in film or television. We can't compete in certain areas, so then let's take the strengths of what we can do and really bring that to the table. And I think we're doing that now with, Crossy Roads and all these other games that are coming out of this country. Often the mobile games, the better ones, come from this country. So it's an interesting industry. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be out of it for a while, and in some ways I kind of look forward to that a little bit, just to have a bit of a break from it. But before I came to this show, I was very much involved in the car industry because I made about 3 TV shows in a row about cars, and I kind of had that same feeling. I was like, look, I really love cars, but once I left those projects, I was like, okay, I'm ready to have a bit of a break from cars now. And I think I'm looking forward to just going back and just being a consumer again, not so much really considering what do the mechanics mean here and what does the story saying. It's like, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this experience. I mean,
we're going to talk about the future of film and TV after this, but where do you think the future of video games lie?
Oh, man, that is a really good question. I think that they are becoming a lot more accessible to a broader audience. There's a game I'm playing at the moment called Reigns on mobile, and it's got the most simple mechanic, which is actually adapted from the dating app Tinder.
Oh, wow. Okay,
so basically you're a king and you're ruling a kingdom and you make decisions by swiping left or right.
Yeah.
And I think that by doing that, what they're doing is they're showing that anybody who doesn't play games can pick this up and get it immediately. So, for example, my girlfriend, she could play this game because she knows, well, I can swipe left and right on a phone. Maybe I can't pick up a PS4 controller and control a third-person shooter because I get the coordination wrong, but I can do that. So I see that games are kind of doing that, but they're doing that particularly with VR. You just put on some goggles and move forward, move backwards. It's about adapting to natural, instincts that we have as humans. So I'd like to see, I'm hoping it kind of goes that way, kind of see that kind of thing. But really, it's moving in so many directions. It's moving to be more hardcore. It's moving to be more accessible. It's moving to be wider. It's moving to be narrower. I think whatever kind of gamer you want to be, and I don't care if you play Candy Crush on the ferry every morning, then you are somewhat of a gamer versus somebody who's got, every console and every game. You're also a gamer. So I think that whatever area you're interested in, there's something out there for you now.
So we're talking about casual and hardcore gamers, and I think we've discussed this a lot, I guess almost weekly on Good Game, is that how do you think gaming audiences should shift or maybe mature in terms of, getting rid of that stigma that we have tried to fight, right, on behalf of Good Game itself? Because I think personally both of us, we've come from a film and television background.
Yeah.
We both enjoyed games, but we didn't really come into Good Game as in, I'm the biggest gamer ever.
Sure.
And I want to make Good Game. We came in as we're really into film and TV and we're production professionals and we want to make a TV show, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what you've seen, I guess, over the 5 years in terms of your interaction with the audience, how do you think the audience should shift in terms of trying to elevate gaming above, what is occasionally the cesspool of the internet, right?
I think it's the internet really, but I think generally speaking, it needs to be a lot more accepting. It doesn't matter if you only play that one game a year, then you want to call yourself a gamer, then that's okay. That's okay. It's okay if you only want to play mobile games. It's okay if you've just still got your Wii and you just like Wii Sports. You're still a gamer. And I think that we need to stop this sort of what's a real gamer, what's not a real gamer. I was here before this or whatever. We need to stop this sort of gatekeeping sort of attitude. And I do see that is becoming smaller and smaller because I think what's happening is as that subculture becomes smaller and smaller, it becomes more vocal because they're kind of trying to fight it. It's like, no, they don't want to be wiped out. But I think generally most people are like, look, gaming is just part of my life the same way that cinema is part of my life, the same way that reading a book is part of my life. It is another medium to convey a story. And as long as people see it as that, my mum can go and watch a film I'm not going to go nuts at her and say, yeah, but you're not a real film watcher. You know what I mean? It's like, just enjoy it.
Do you get the lore?
Do you understand what's actually happening in this moment? Do you see the lenses they're using? It doesn't matter. Did that person enjoy it? Did that person take something away from it? So that's what I think. And I think in terms of how gamers interact with it, I think our job in terms of gaming media is to create content for many different voices in many different ways. If you're a hardcore gamer, go on the internet and watch YouTube and listen to specific podcasts. If you're a bit more of a casual gamer, come and watch, television or shows made about gaming, because it's a bit more of a generalist content that's more about the culture than it is about specific games. So I think the good thing about it is that it is just kind of becoming a very casual part of everybody's life.
I think that's, normalization, right?
Normalization.
Like for many things, that's the key.
That's the thing. It's not a big deal. If you meet somebody and they go, I play games, you want to stop that kind of, oh, really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Even I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And occasionally you meet someone and you're like, you have that like initial reaction about it, and you can't help it. It's almost like instinctual or something.
Yeah, that's right.
So speaking about taking a break from gaming now, what are you looking forward to in your next role?
I'm looking forward to working across a range of content, which I'm very lucky going to get to do. So already I'm diving into the subject matter of my next project, and it's something that couldn't be further from gaming if it tried. So after this, I'm going to stop off at a bookstore and just pick up a couple of books about the subject. So I'm looking forward to learning new things about new cultures. TV producing, and what I always love about TV is, at my core, I'm actually quite an introvert. If I wasn't pushed, I'd probably just sit at home all day, like, to be honest with you.
Yeah, why would you ever want to socialise?
What's
no one
out
wants
there?
to do that.
The world's not that interesting. But what TV does is, if you're a producer, essentially you're a storyteller, and to be a storyteller, you need to absorb. You need to learn something, because you need to convey that story to an audience. So what I'm looking forward to doing is getting out and just learning something new about a completely new group of people, a new culture, a new lifestyle, and just sort of opening up the world a little bit. Again, what I liked about working on Good Game as well, I got to meet a lot of different people from different backgrounds and hear different stories.
Awesome. So I want to talk about the future of film and TV.
Right.
Because I think you and I discuss this a lot, right? And
almost daily.
We have a lot of opinions on this. I don't even know where to start. I mean, where do you see film and TV now?
I think it's a cliche to say we're going through a transition, but I think we absolutely are. We will still be going through this transition in the next couple of years, because I think what we're seeing is it's not so much about the content, it's how people find it. And I think that is the biggest change. The biggest change is how people hear about shows, where they find it, and how they absorb it. And I think that what TV producers need to do to make better content for the audience is understand where your audience are, how they absorb it, and how they interact with, I hate to use this word, but television is a product. That's the reality. Film is as well. How they interact with your product. It's really interesting to see what's happening in the marketing sector of big corporations. It used to be you'd have a marketing manager and you would have a digital manager, like an online manager, a digital content manager. Those two roles are starting to become absorbed into one role, and it's called customer journey manager. I don't know, it sounds really wanky, and it absolutely is.
But it's great, because you know why? Who needs a social media manager these days,
It doesn't matter
Everything's
anymore.
Social media.
It's about where your customer find it, how they interact with it, how they talk about it. It is a journey. And I think that the more that we can learn from that kind of experience in the corporate sector and bring into television, the better. It really it doesn't matter what you make. It's how you reach your audience.
I was reading an article a few weeks back, I think on Vulture, and it was saying, we always talk about this generation as the golden age of television, right?
Yeah.
And we've been saying it for years and years now. And what was interesting about that article was it was saying, even though we're in this golden age of TV, even though we're at a stage where so much television is being made, it's even harder nowadays to actually get funding for a project.
Right.
Which is like a really, really interesting point about it. And in terms of funding, I mean, I think Australia has a hard time with that, because we only have, we have a very limited market,
Yeah.
and obviously we have government support. Obviously we have public broadcasters as well as Screen Australia and all the state bodies. But where do you see Australian television going in particular?
I think we need to think globally. And I think that's something we've always struggled with a little bit in the Australian film industry. We're very good at telling our own stories. We're very good at telling very genuine, very Australian, very authentic stories. But how will somebody on the other side of the planet respond to that? And I think the films that work in Australia in terms of reaching a global audience are the ones that tell a global story from a local point of view. And I think that's what we need to get better at. It's really hard because then you start to layer everything on top of that, and that is one aspect at its core which needs to be right. But then you've got all this stuff around now, making your show noisy, making your show conversational. Is it water cooler
what does that
television?
Even mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I see that we're trying to do it, and we're hitting some strides. Things like Clever Man and the Catering Incident on Foxtel and other shows, they're getting international sales and they're getting good reviews and they're being well responded to. And I think that we have to kind of do that kind of stuff because the reality is we can't just make a show for Australian audiences anymore. It's too expensive. The stakes are too high. To compete with the HBOs and the Netflix, we really need to put the money on the screen, and we just don't have that kind of money.
But what about that idea of, you always make the best content that you can make, right? Or tell the best story that you can tell. Like, I always have a great aversion to, market research and market testing, and the idea that you make something for a certain demographic of people that some statistician or data analyst came up with. Like, to me as a creative, I just go, what? Like, that is almost like the complete wrong way that you want to make something. And yet in this industry, in particular, even in Hollywood and stuff, you look at Warner Brothers, you look at the DC franchise right now, and it's almost like people are making content that way according to numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel
based
like
on test screenings.
That is just so... I mean, maybe it's not dangerous for the studio, but I feel like it's dangerous for the medium.
Oh, absolutely. And you look at the best television and film as well, and it really does come down to the auteur. It comes down to that showrunner, single voice culture. Yes, Vince Gilligan doesn't make Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad all on his own. He's got a team, but he is the final say. He is the creative drive. He's the one who points to a star in the sky and says, guys, this is where we're going. And I think that we haven't really adapted that culture here in Australia. We need that single voice showrunner culture. So we're getting a voice that is genuine, and when you watch a show, you feel like, yes, this would actually happen to this character. When I watch Better Call Saul, maybe you're the same, you think, yeah, that's exactly what that character would do.
But it's human stories in the end. I think anytime you make anything right, I mean, we talk about making good game. Yeah. And I was saying to someone as well in the meeting today that, we make factual entertainment, but it's still about human stories in the end. It's still about human moments. Yeah. Even if they're fictional, if they're non-fictional, it's about what connects your audience to your material,
yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
Why do you think the Scandinavians have been so successful?
That's really interesting.
Because essentially they're making shows for themselves.
Yeah, that's true. That is a really good point of view. I mean, they've almost created their own genre. Yeah. This kind of crime noir sort of, what do they call, have they got a name for it?
Scandinavian noir.
Scandinoir or something. And I think because to a certain point when you tune into that, you know what you're going to expect. A lot of it is not that diverse in terms of its overall messaging or tone or what have you. And I think that people, generally audiences, like a little bit of familiarity. They're like, okay, I know that if I'm going to invest an hour of my life into this show, I know kind of to a certain point what it is and I'm going to get. But I think they've just kind of honed their formula really well. They've found that little niche in the market and they're not afraid to exploit that. And there's nothing wrong with that. We should be the same. If
do you think we try and do too much? We have this set of money, and then I feel like a lot of times in Australia people want to emulate Hollywood
absolutely.
Or HBO or something, but then we only have so much money. Yeah. And then that money means that we can't trust a showrunner because too many people are at stake or too many things are at stake, and therefore we're not doing anything very well. Yeah. It's kind of like in the middle ground.
If it fails, it's too much of a disaster.
Yeah, for everyone.
For everyone, that's the thing. If something on HBO doesn't really work, I'm trying to think of a HBO concept.
True Detective Season 2.
True Detective Season 2, there we go. It's like, well, look, it's okay. Nick Pezzolano is going to go make this show with Robert Downey Jr. All those actors are going to go on to something. It's like, all right, we took a hit on that one, but we made a back, on the night of, or Silicon Valley or something that is doing really well for us. Whereas Foxtel or Stan or iView or something invest in a project, they need it to do really well. So really, everybody kind of gets a say because like they're very nervous. They're like, is this thing going to work? So I get it. I get when sometimes Australian television feels like it's produced by a committee, because when you're getting all these different funding pools, and funding in Australia is a patchwork, it's a puzzle. You've got to keep all of those people happy versus one particular body saying, all right, we're going to give you all the money and all you really need to do is keep us happy.
Yeah. I bring up another interesting point because I read another article on Taika Waititi.
The director of
the director of Hunt for the Wilder People and
What We Do in the Shadows.
What We Do in the Shadows. Boy. Singular auteur. Voice, right?
Yeah.
And phenomenally successful.
Yeah.
I think Hunt for the Wilder People was the biggest opening film in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You look at a guy like that and you think that's why individual voices work.
Yeah. But he's got I've heard him referred to as like the Southern Hemisphere's Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
But he's got something that I think every director or writer or whatever it is needs, where you need to watch a couple of shots and go, oh, I bet it's the director of such and such. When you watch a Spielberg film, you don't need to see his name. You watch and go, I bet this is Spielberg. Even Michael Bay.
Yeah.
You watch an explosion scene and you go, I bet that's Michael Bay. And that's what an audience is coming to see you for. That's what a producer is investing in you for. They want that voice. They want that unique image. And it's something we don't do a lot of here in Australia. We do it a little bit, with Baz Luhrmann and George Miller and Peter Weir and all the rest of it. It's like, okay, you've got a vision that I can instantly recognise. And he has that.
But they also, that was the group that came through AFTRS, like in the 70s, right? Yeah. And since then, we don't have anyone else because the biggest issue in Australia right now, in particular in feature film, and, you've done like two or three features now, is that most often, if you get government funding, if you get a moderately mid-budget feature film funded, it probably takes you another 10 to 15 years before you make another one. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
And so whereas most directors would hone their visual style, storytelling skills in their first, say, 3 to 4 films, like back-to-back, say, do it in 5 to 6 years, even if they're really low budget.
Yeah.
In Australia, it's taking these directors like 20 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And by that time, everyone's moved on.
Yeah,
Cinema has moved on.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also, because that director needs to keep so many people happy, if he or she is putting a unique vision on the screen, it makes people nervous.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's weird. And it's like, well, that's exactly why people are going to go and see this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the conversation about diversity, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if a diversity report was
it's terrible.
Revealed this week.
Yeah.
Not that, we didn't know anything about this beforehand. It was like the most obvious report. Like, why did you even pay for that report, right?
That's right. But I like how children's television in Australia is more diverse than adult television.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, at least my kids might be, Yeah,
so kids are growing up understanding that, they're a diverse range of people that they live with and they belong on screen. And it's really weird that I had so many people tweeting about this report, and the report recommends that another report be written about it, and then there's going to be another panel on diversity later in the year.
Take that money and put it into a show.
I just honestly, take all the money that you're going to use on writing that report and holding that panel, and just hire the most diverse cast of crew.
Go out to Cabramatta
that you can. Like, it doesn't even matter if it's successful or not, right? Just do it.
Just do it and put it on the screen.
At least these people will get the experience to then do other projects, right? Instead of like sitting around and talking about it. And that's like the one thing that really pisses me off is when people sit around talking about it and going, oh, yeah, we need more diversity. Yeah, we need more diversity. Just fucking do it, man.
Yeah, just make it.
Like, just do it.
Yeah,
so if people have individual or singular voices and they want something to happen, then trust in them. Yes, some people will fail. Some people will succeed.
Yeah.
But what hopefully you will get rid of is this kind of mediocre middle ground that I feel like Australia is kind of sitting on at the moment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it's so frustrating because, like, I mean, for me, it's like, make it either really good or really bad.
Yeah,
At least there's entertainment on either scale.
Give me a reason to get in the car, drive to the cinema, park my car, go in, buy tickets. Like, give me a reason to do that.
Or even turn on the TV, right?
Yeah,
like, how many of us don't even watch television right now?
Exactly.
There's just like, well, you know, you might watch that big reality show, you know, for that 3 months out of the year that you're interested in, and then that's it. You
give the local Aussie drama a couple of episodes before you kind of drift in and out. And you're like, oh, look, Game of Thrones is back on. I'll switch over back to that.
That's the thing. I mean, talking about Australian drama, I mean, obviously we talked about it a lot. I feel like even in recent dramas, it's almost that they're trying to appease everyone in a way. They're trying to please so many demographics or so many groups of the audience that it just becomes this beige war colour.
Absolutely.
And there's just nothing, no pop at all. There's nothing interesting. And you end up going, what's on Netflix?
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
I just want to quickly touch on tentpole franchises.
Oh,
Hollywood.
okay.
So you're a massive comic book fan.
I am.
You've had your comic book show,
yes,
you know, for many years.
Yes.
I mean, what's Hollywood doing?
Look, they're buying into a fan base that they know is there. And, you know, it's really interesting. I read a book called Blockbuster, which was by Anne Thompson, a Hollywood reporter. And this Blockbuster book, it was only a couple of years old, but she said, you watch, we're going to shift from an investment in people to an investment in characters. And that is exactly what's happening today. You know, I don't know who any of the people are in the latest Ben-Hur film, apart from Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard of the director, but I don't really know much about him. But it's not an investment in those people or that vision or any of those actors.
Right?
It's in the brand. It's like, well, people have heard of Ben-Hur, so they're probably like, oh, they've remade it. Well, I'll go and check it out. Same with all the, you know, DC, Marvel, comic book stuff. It's like, well, you know Batman, so you'll probably be like, yeah, all right, I'll go and check out Batman because I like Batman. They're just looking for guarantees now, which is really sad. But at the same time, some of them are good, so I still like my comic book films. I go and see all of them. I like to have an opinion, and sometimes they're really enjoyable. But I do think we need these moments because what we need from them is the reaction. We need those, you know, kids coming out of film school right now, 18, 19, 20, 21, however old they are, and they need to come out of Suicide Squad and go, well, God, that was awful. And then they need to go and write the next... You know,
what if they come out saying that was awesome? That's my greatest fear. It's like, what if these kids are like actually enjoying these films?
Yeah, I think generally, I think we're getting about half-half. I mean, I don't have any facts to back that up, but I think people are coming out thinking, yeah, you know, that was great. But I think we're getting equally as many people coming out thinking, you know what, I can do better. So we need that reaction to it. That's exactly what happened towards the late 60s and early 70s when the Hollywood system fell. We had people coming out going, they're not making cinema for me anymore, so I need to take control of it. I need to pick up a 16mm camera and I need to go and make, you know, things like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and... what was Francis Ford Coppola's earliest film, The Rain People, or whatever it was. You know, we need people like that to come and go, okay, I'm going to fight the system and I'm going to go and do this on my own.
Shake it up again.
Yeah, exactly. People need to embrace it, watch it, celebrate it, and then Hollywood go, okay, we do need to have a swing back. The pendulum will swing back. It will just take a lot longer.
Yeah. Well, I think this podcast proves that there's a future in a film and TV podcast.
Absolutely.
With us too, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure working and knowing you for half a decade. That's a very long time.
Don't put it like that.
Bon voyage and good luck on your future endeavours.
Yes.
The industry is small, so I'm sure we'll cross paths down the track.
Yep.
Was there anything that you wanted to say to maybe the Good Game audience or the Good Game team?
I do. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you to the Good Game team. Working in television is a lot like moving to a small country town. People can be weird at first, but then they accept you, and I definitely feel like that. So thank you, Lin, and thank you to everybody else that I've worked with on Good Game. And yeah, of course, thank you to the Good Game audience. I've never had a relationship with an audience in any other show that I've made like I have with the Good Game audience. They are very vocal. They let you know what they like. They let you know what they don't like. And I appreciate that. Sometimes it's hard to hear. Sometimes it's great to hear. But it makes you make better television. And really, at the end of the day, that's all I want to do.
Great. Thanks very much, Ben.
Thanks, Lynn.
Once more, if you've got a topic or question you'd like us to discuss, drop me a line at Elgeology or leave a comment on SoundCloud and Facebook. As always, you can also subscribe and listen on iTunes. Till next time, goodbye.